What if the most powerful beings in existence feared someone who never raised a voice? Not Michael, the warrior of light, not Lucifer, the rebel of fire, but someone silent, someone who never fought, yet ended everything. When he walks in, the music of heaven fades, even the mightiest bow their heads. Because when he appears, your time is over. You've heard of angels with swords, trumpets, fire. But what if the most feared angel was the one who didn't speak? What if death wasn't an event, but a being, a presence? And what if he's been watching you your whole life, not with judgment, but with purpose? This is the Prophecy Vault, and today we're opening a door few dare to even knock on, a door that leads beyond Scripture, into the breath between life and what comes next. They call him Azrael, the angel of death, but that name only scratches the surface. For centuries, his story was whispered between lines of sacred texts, in forgotten scrolls, hidden gospels, and the darker corners of tradition. Few dared to speak it plainly, even fewer tried to understand it. Because to understand Azrael is to stand face to face with the one thing we all try to avoid, the end. But what if I told you Azrael is not your enemy? What if I told you he's not here to take, but to guide? Not a monster, but a mirror. Tonight, we go back to the beginning. Before time, before breath, before even death itself. We'll walk the path that no angel wanted. We'll hear the silence that made Michael tremble. We'll see the flame that made Lucifer step aside. And when we're done, you may never see death the same way again. If you're ready to see the story beneath the story, stay with us. Hit like if you're drawn to the mysteries. Subscribe if you're hungry for what lies between the pages. And in the comments, share your thoughts, your questions, or the moment you first felt something watching. This is the story of Azrael, and he's been waiting. There was a time when death didn't exist. No funerals, no sickness, no whispered goodbyes. Just breath, just light, just to eternity. In the beginning, the garden was still alive. Yes, but not loud. Everything moved in harmony. The trees swayed in rhythms only heaven could write. Waters glided, never rushed, never angry. And in that garden, two figures stood beneath a tree. Adam, Eve. The first man formed from the dust, the first woman drawn from his side. They had everything but one thing. One tree, one command, one choice. You must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die. Genesis 2. But the fruit looked so ordinary, so beautiful, so harmless, and the voice that tempted them wasn't loud. It was subtle. Did God really say? Eve looked at the fruit, then at Adam. He looked back, uncertain. Their hands trembled, the garden watched. No thunder, no storm, just stillness, waiting. And then she reached. Her fingers wrapped around it. She bit. Then she handed it to him, and he did the same. In that moment, the light bent, the wind stopped. A sound so small, a fruit falling to the ground, and something shifted, not just in them, but in everything. Then the eyes of both were opened. Genesis 3:7. They saw themselves, and they were ashamed. They covered, they hid, not from danger, not from death, but from the weight of what they had done. The garden, once filled with warmth, turned cold. The golden light faded into gray. The breeze that once danced now felt sharp. The world, in an instant, knew what it was to lose something. Because in that simple, irreversible moment, death entered. It didn't roar. It didn't scream. It walked in softly on bare feet. It slipped between the leaves and settled into the silence. Not as a punishment, but as a consequence. Not because God was cruel, but because now something had been broken, and breakage has a price. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. Genesis 3:19. That was the moment, the first goodbye, the first fall. From eternity into time, from endlessness into endings. And since then, every life has walked toward a finish line it didn't choose. All because of a bite, all because of a moment, all because someone wanted more than they were ready for. So let me ask you, if you were Adam, standing in that light, feeling the weight of eternity on your shoulders, would you have reached out? Would you have tasted it? Would you have chosen curiosity over trust? This story isn't about blame. It's about choice, about consequence, about the moment everything changed. And once death came into the world, someone had to carry it. Someone had to guide the soul from life to the other side. Not with anger, not with vengeance, but with silence and strength. That was Azrael's beginning, and the next chapter is his. What do you do when the world cries out and begs you to stop? When creation itself says, "Please, not me." After Adam's fall, something needed to be done. The plan had changed. The timeline had shifted. Humanity was coming, but now, so was death. God gave a command, a task. The first man would be made from the dust of the earth, but someone had to gather that dust. Someone had to touch the ground where death would one day walk. So he turned to his angels. First, to Michael, the warrior, strong, loyal. But when Michael approached, the earth cried. Its voice rose like a trembling mother. "Do not take from me," it pleaded, do not give birth to sorrow. And Michael, mighty as he was, couldn't do it. Then God turned to Gabriel, the messenger, swift, pure. Gabriel descended, his wings stirring the soil. But the earth wept again, and Gabriel felt something rise in him. Compassion. He could not take from what begged to be spared. He left it untouched and returned. And so God called Azrael. Not yet the angel of death, not yet known to the world. Just one among the host, quiet, faithful, obedient. He listened and he went. No trumpet, no flames, no echo. Just silence. The sky dimmed as he descended, not from glory, but from resolve. He landed among the trees. The earth trembled beneath him. A voice rose from the ground, gentle but breaking. "Please," it said, "I know what will come from me. Blood, grace, grief." Azrael knelt. His hands hovered above the soil. He could feel its warmth, its innocence, its sorrow. And still he reached down, one handful, then another. The wind fell silent. The trees bowed. Even the stars seemed to blink slower. Azrael didn't speak, not to silence the earth, not to soothe himself. He simply obeyed. Some say he whispered a promise to the dust. "I will return this to you." Others say he said nothing at all. Because sometimes doing the right thing doesn't need words. It just needs courage. He rose carrying what others would not. He returned to heaven but something had changed. In that moment, Azrael proved something no one else had. That true strength is not in the sword or the voice or the miracle, but in the silence that obeys when it would be easier to walk away. He didn't choose what was easy. He chose what was right. He chose what no one else would. And from that day forward, his path was set. He had touched the beginning, so one day he would carry the end. Because every soul that draws breath from that same dust will one day be guided back by him. So now I ask you, have you ever done what no one else would just because it was right? Have you ever listened to something cry out and still kept walking? Not out of cruelty, but out of calling? Azrael did, and that's why his next task would be unlike any other. The first soul, the first death, and the beginning of the end. He didn't just follow death. He became its form. Not with rage, not with fire, but with stillness. After Azrael returned with the dust, heaven grew quiet. The angels who once sang, who once cried out in praise, stood silent. There were no wings in motion, no songs in the air, only stillness, like the world itself was listening. God had asked them all, only one obeyed, and so he gave Azrael a role no one else would take. Not the trumpet, not the sword, not the crown of light, but the silence that comes after the final heartbeat. Azrael, the one who dared touch the earth, was chosen to carry the end of every story. Not to punish, not to condemn, but to guide. From that moment on, he became the angel who walks beside every soul, from breath to stillness, from flesh to eternity. He became Malak al-Maut, the angel of death. The Quran says, "It is Allah who gives life and causes death." Surah Az-Zumar 39:42. Azrael does not take a soul without purpose. He does not act on emotion. He never comes too soon and never too late. He arrives when the scroll says the time has come. When a name fades from the record, he moves, not by his will, but by the will of the one who made time. And when he comes, he does not knock, he does not shout. He simply appears. Sometimes he sends others in his place, lesser angels tasked with carrying the souls. But in holy moments, Azrael comes himself. One of those was for Moses. According to the traditions, when it was time for the prophet to leave this world, Azrael approached him with reverence, not fear. Not with chains, but with invitation. He said, "Your Lord calls you." And Moses, the one who stood on Sinai, who split the sea, who bore the weight of a nation, knew it was time. He did not resist. He did not run. He looked into the face of the angel and said, "Then let me return to him." Azrael did not force him. He never does. He simply reminds the soul of what it already knows, that the journey has reached its next step. And yet we fear him, not because he is cruel, but because he is final. Because it is not death that haunts us. It is being unfinished, unready, forgotten. But Azrael carries no sword. He holds no scale. He speaks no judgment. He only opens the door and waits. So let me ask you, if someone appeared at sunrise, calm and unshaken, and said, "It's time," your part in the story is complete. How would you respond? Would you beg for one more moment? Would you plead for one more breath? Or would you close your eyes and let go? Azrael became what no one else would, not a hero, not a villain, but the quiet hand at the edge of every story. And from here, his reach would only grow. Because death comes for kings and children alike, and Azrael was now watching over them all. What if your life was an eye on someone's body, an eye that never blinked, a tongue that never spoke, but both still alive, still connected to you? Azrael's form was never meant for the human mind because his task isn't meant for human hands. He doesn't just appear, he embodies. Every soul he watches becomes part of him. According to ancient accounts, Azrael is covered in eyes, each one linked to a living soul on earth. Your breath, your heartbeat, your very existence reflected through one of his eyes. And when that breath ends, the eye disappears. Gone, not slowly, not gently, just gone. Some say the finger closest to that soul goes cold. Azrael feels it, not like pain, more like gravity, a piece of him falling silent. But it's not just eyes. His body, if it can be called a body, is also wrapped in tongues, each tongue tied to a person's voice. Every language, every laugh, every cry represented, remembered. And when a voice stops, that tongue vanishes. Thousands of tongues, thousands of eyes, shifting, fading, renewing, always in motion. Because life never pauses and death never sleeps. Islamic tradition speaks of 70,000 limbs, 4,000 wings. Not metaphor, not poetry. A truth so vast it collapses the imagination. Some of his wings are described as bright, like the dawn. Wings of mercy. Wings that carry prophets, the righteous, the peaceful. Others are not. Dark, heavy, forged of iron, laced with hooks, scissors, and blades. Those wings do not comfort. They tear, they drag, they belong to judgment, to souls that fled truth their whole lives. But Azrael doesn't choose the wing, you do. By how you live, by how you speak, by what you carry in your soul when the final breath comes. And here's what haunts most people. Azrael's form isn't fixed. It changes with every life added, every life lost. That means somewhere on this great and terrible being, you exist. Your soul, your voice, your breath, they are reflected in one of his limbs. And when your name is erased from the scroll, that piece of him will vanish. So I ask you, where is your eye on Azrael's body? Where is your tongue? If you saw it, what would it say? Would it speak peace? Would it scream? Would it weep? Most of us will never know, not until the moment comes. And when it does, he will not need to find you, because he's already with you, watching, waiting, not with hatred, not with pride, but with a task he never asked for, yet never abandoned. Azrael is not like the angels in paintings. He is not light. He is not shadow. He is the boundary, the one who stretches across realms, from the first breath to the last whisper. And in the next part of his story, you'll see what happens when that whisper is met with mercy or terror. How you lived decides how you see him. Azrael doesn't arrive in one form. He arrives in yours. Not your body, but your soul. Your regrets, your kindness, your choices, your truth. He reflects back what you carried inside in your quietest hours. For the righteous, he is gentle, radiant, even beautiful. To them, Azrael brings peace, not fear. A soft presence that doesn't demand, but invites. Rumi, the great Sufi poet, once dreamed of Azrael, not as a figure of terror, not cloaked in black, but as a friend, a familiar light. And in that dream, Rumi said, I welcomed him as a friend. He wasn't afraid, because the life he had lived prepared him for the meeting. He didn't need to fight to stay. He was ready to go. Now imagine the opposite, a soul filled with cruelty, deceit, pride. That soul doesn't see warmth. Azrael comes, but not softly. He appears as terror, a force, a shadow so heavy it chokes the air in the room. The light around him becomes cold, gray, brittle, unforgiving. The soul cries out, but the time has come. And when he reaches for it, it feels not like lifting, but tearing, like a blade sliding through fabric that refuses to be cut. Traditions say, for the unjust, death is not a gentle sleep. It is resistance, a soul clawing for the body it no longer belongs to. But the body lets go. It always does. Azrael doesn't speak, he doesn't explain. He simply does what was always promised. And in that moment, the soul sees not who he is, but who they've been. Azrael reflects, like a mirror at the edge of eternity. Not to shame, but to reveal. Not to punish, but to fulfill. That's what makes him different. He doesn't end your story. He shows you how you wrote it. Some see light, some see shadow, but he doesn't change. We do. And how we lived determines how we leave. So let me ask you, if today were your final day, if the sun rose and never set for you again, what would you see when he arrived? Would his presence calm you or consume you? Would he feel like a welcome friend or a stranger in the dark? Would you hold out your hand or turn away? The truth is, you're answering that with every choice you make. With every word, every silence, every act of compassion or cruelty. Because Azrael is coming, not as punishment, but as promise. And when he does, he won't bring judgment. He'll bring a mirror, and in it, you will see everything you've ever been. So now, as we move deeper into his story, remember this. He doesn't just appear, he arrives as you. And the question is, will you be ready to meet yourself? When he walks in, even heaven stops breathing. There are angels who shine like fire, angels who thunder across battlefields, angels who bend space with a word. But there's only one whose presence makes even them step back in silence. Azrael doesn't come with fanfare. He doesn't ride in storms. He arrives quietly, and when he does, the room changes. Imagine the choirs of heaven, multitudes of angels singing in harmonies older than time. Voices rising like sunlight over creation itself. Now imagine that music falling silent. Not because someone asked, not because they forgot the words, but because he entered. When Azrael appears, every note catches in the throat. Michael, the great warrior, lowers his sword. Gabriel, the divine messenger, folds his wings. Lucifer, before his fall, used to look away. Because Azrael is not like them. Michael defends. Gabriel speaks. Azrael finishes. And in the eyes of the divine, nothing is heavier than the one who ends the song. It's not his power that makes him terrifying. It's his certainty. Azrael never misses, never doubts, never stops. You can't argue with him. You can't plead. You can't offer more time. Because when he's near, it's already over. Legends say even the bearers of the throne, the mightiest angels in the cosmos, lower their gaze when he enters. Not out of shame, but because they know what he carries. He is the last note in every melody, the final light in every sunset. He does not belong to war like Michael. He does not belong to prophecy like Gabriel. He belongs to the closing of the book, the stillness after the story ends. Some say his silence is louder than thunder because it means no more words are coming. And that's what the angels fear. Not Azrael's face, not his wings, but what his presence always means, that the time for doing is gone. So I ask you, if even heaven stills at his approach, what would you do if he stood in front of you? Not with anger, not with judgment, but with a silence that tells you, this is it. This is the moment you've always walked toward. And as we step into the next chapter, you'll see why Azrael isn't just the end. Toward. He's the one who makes every end feel final. Even death must one day die. It sounds impossible, but the end has an end of its own. And in that moment, Azrael, the angel who walked between every breath and every silence, meets his final task. It begins after the end of the world. Judgment Day has come. Every soul has been called. Every book has been opened. Paradise is full. Hell is sealed. Time has nowhere else to go. And there, in the stillness between eternity and now, a strange figure is brought forth. Death itself. Not an idea, not a feeling, but a being. In some traditions, he appears as a ram, horns curved, eyes burning, body made of flame. He is placed between heaven and hell. All of creation is watching, the angels, the prophets, the righteous, the condemned. Everyone is silent. Then God gives the command, and before the eyes of all, death is slain. The fire goes out, the horns fall, the body crumbles like ash into the dust from which Adam was made. Azrael does not speak, he does not flinch. He lowers his head, he understands. His role, the most feared, the most misunderstood, is complete. There is nothing left to carry, no names on the scroll, no souls waiting in silence. He was the boundary. Now there are no more edges. Azrael steps back, and some say he fades. Not in pain, not in sorrow, but in peace. Because when death ends, life becomes endless. When the gate closes, the garden opens, and death shall be no more. Revelation 21:4. That is the promise. That is the finale. The one who was feared for so long was simply the servant of something greater. He wasn't darkness, he was the shadow before the light. He wasn't cruelty, he was closure. Azrael never demanded worship, he never asked for recognition. He just waited for the name to be called, and then he did what no one else could. But now, there are no names left, no time left, no death left. So he bows and lets go. And the world, for the first time since Eden, takes a breath that will never run out. Eternal life begins only when the last silence has been spoken. So I ask you, are you living as if the end is only the end? Or are you living like it might be the beginning of something eternal? Because Azrael's story was never about fear. It was about faithfulness, obedience, the courage to hold every goodbye so that one day we could all say hello forever. Azrael was not the villain of life. He was its closure. He didn't steal our time. He honored its meaning. He didn't come to punish. He came to fulfill. Every step you've taken, every breath you've drawn, he's been there, not chasing you, but waiting. Not to end you, but to carry you onward. From the dust of Adam to the fire of the Ram, he has stood at the edge of every story. Not as a shadow, but as a threshold. Not as fear, but as a mirror. And when the last page turns, he is the one who gently closes the book. Because he was never sent to terrify. He was sent to transition, to walk beside you when no one else can. So now I ask you, if today were your final page, would Azrael meet you with warmth or with silence, cold as stone? Would you see him as a friend or as a force? Would his eyes reflect peace or regret? The life you live shapes the form he takes, not because he changes, but because you do. He carries no judgment, but he shows you what you carried all along. So what are you carrying right now? Are you living like the end is only the end, or like it might be the beginning of something eternal? Because one day his hand will reach out not to take, but to lead. And the question isn't whether he's coming. It's whether you'll be ready to follow. If this story stirred something in you, leave a word below, a reflection, a prayer, a moment you remember. And if you want more journeys through mystery, spirit, and truth, subscribe. Let's keep walking through the veil together. Because some stories don't end, they awaken. And Azrael was never the last word. He was the whisper before eternity began.